My name is Rebecca Matthews, I'm 34 years old, and 6 months ago I did something that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. I foreclosed on my father's dream house. The same house he'd spent 15 years building from the ground up. The same house where he looked me in the eye at my college graduation party and said, "You'll never amount to anything, Rebecca. Some people are just born to struggle." Those words echoed in my mind as I signed the foreclosure papers, watching his life's work become mine with the stroke of a pen. Before we dive into this story, I want you to know this isn't just about revenge. It's about what happens when someone underestimates you for so long that they forget you're still listening, still watching, still growing stronger. If you've ever been the family disappointment, the one they wrote off before you even had a chance to prove yourself, this story is going to hit different. Please take a moment to like this video if you're ready for some serious payback, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love connecting with people who understand what it feels like to be underestimated. Now let me take you back to where this all started, because understanding my family dynamics is crucial to appreciating just how sweet this revenge really was. I grew up in a house where my older brother Daniel could do no wrong, and I could do no right. Daniel was the golden child, captain of the football team, straight A's without trying, naturally charismatic in that way that made adults light up when he walked into a room. I was the bookworm with thick glasses and social anxiety who spent more time in the library than anywhere else. My father, Robert Matthews, was a successful construction contractor who'd built his business from nothing. He was old school in every sense, believed in hard work, traditional values, and the idea that sons carried on the family legacy while daughters were meant to marry well and fade into the background. From the time I could walk, it was clear that Daniel was being groomed to take over Matthew's construction, while I was expected to play supporting roles. "Rebecca's smart enough," Dad would say when people asked about my future, "but she doesn't have the backbone for business. Women get too emotional about these things." Daniel ate it up. He strutted around like he owned the world, making decisions about the family business at 17 while I wasn't even allowed to voice opinions about paint colors for my own bedroom. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, Dad's response was, "Good for you, sweetheart. Now you can find yourself a nice husband at college." I remember the exact moment I decided to prove him wrong. It was the summer before my sophomore year at State University. I was home working at a local coffee shop to save money for textbooks while Daniel spent his days learning the business by driving around in company trucks and flirting with clients' daughters. I discovered I had a real talent for numbers, not just math, but understanding financial patterns, market trends, investment strategies. My economics professors were encouraging me to consider finance or real estate. One evening at dinner, I made the mistake of sharing my excitement about a real estate investment course I wanted to take. "Real estate?" Dad laughed, actually laughed. "Rebecca, you can barely handle ordering pizza without second-guessing yourself. You think you're going to be making million-dollar deals?" Daniel joined in. "Come on, Becca. Be realistic. Maybe accounting or something safe like that." "I'm serious about this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Professor Williams thinks I have real potential." Dad set down his fork and looked at me with that expression I knew so well, part pity, part annoyance. "Listen to me carefully, Rebecca. Some people are born leaders, and some people are born followers. There's no shame in knowing which one you are. You're a follower. You always have been. And that's fine, but don't go getting ideas above your station." The words hit like physical blows. But what came next was worse. "You'll never amount to anything in business, sweetheart. You don't have the killer instinct. You're too soft, too emotional. Find yourself a nice stable job, marry a good man, and let him handle the big financial decisions. That's what women like you are built for." The kitchen went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Mom looked uncomfortable but said nothing. She never contradicted Dad. Daniel was grinning like he'd just watched his competition eliminate itself. I excused myself and went to my room, where I cried until my eyes were swollen shut. But somewhere between the tears and the rage, something crystallized inside me. A cold, hard determination that would fuel everything that came after. I changed my major to finance and real estate the next week. The years that followed were a masterclass in being systematically dismissed and undermined. When I made Dean's List 3 semesters in a row, Dad said, "Grades don't mean anything in the real world." When I landed a prestigious internship at a commercial real estate firm, he said, "Anyone can get coffee for important people." The worst part wasn't just Dad's dismissal, it was watching how it influenced everyone else in the family. Mom started treating me like I was playing dress-up instead of building a career. Extended family members would ask Daniel about his future plans with genuine interest, then turn to me with polite but empty questions about when I planned to settle down. Even my successes were reframed as failures. When I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in finance and real estate, Dad's response was, "All those fancy degrees, and what do you have to show for it?" Daniel's already running job sites and making real money. Daniel, meanwhile, had dropped out of college after 2 years to join Matthew's construction full-time. He was making good money, I'll give him that, but he was also developing some concerning habits. Too much drinking, too much gambling, too many questionable business decisions that Dad either ignored or cleaned up quietly. I moved to Denver after graduation and started working for Pinnacle Commercial Real Estate. I lived in a studio apartment, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and spent my weekend studying market reports instead of dating. My colleagues thought I was crazy, working 80-hour weeks and taking on projects no one else wanted. But I had a plan. Every dismissive comment from my father, every time he'd praised Daniel while ignoring my achievements, every family gathering where I was treated like an afterthought, it all went into a mental file labeled motivation. I wasn't just building a career, I was building a weapon. The first year was brutal. I was the youngest person in most meetings, often the only woman, always having to prove I belonged. I made mistakes, got yelled at, learned hard lessons about negotiation and client management. But I also started noticing patterns in the market that others missed. Denver was booming, but not evenly. While everyone was focused on downtown development and tech company expansions, I saw opportunity in the overlooked neighborhoods on the city's edges. Areas that were still affordable but showed signs of incoming growth, new transit lines, zoning changes, demographic shifts that suggested future development. I started small. Really small. I found a rundown duplex in an area called Riverside that was scheduled to get a new light rail station in 3 years. The owner was motivated to sell quickly due to a divorce. I scraped together every penny I had, maxed out 3 credit cards, and borrowed the down payment from my 401k to buy it for $85,000. Everyone thought I was insane. Even my mentor at Pinnacle warned me against it. "Rebecca, that neighborhood is still rough around the edges. You're taking a huge risk on a maybe." But I'd done my homework. I knew the city's long-term transportation plans, the upcoming zoning changes, the demographic data showing young professionals being priced out of downtown. I renovated the duplex myself on weekends. YouTube University taught me everything from plumbing to tile work. I rented both units to graduate students and broke even on the mortgage while the property appreciated. Within 18 months, that duplex was worth $140,000. I sold it and used the profit to buy 2 more properties, slightly better ones in areas showing similar early signs of growth. I was still working my day job, still living like a broke college student, but I was building something my father couldn't see or understand. The family updates during this period were painful but instructive. Daniel had been given a promotion to project manager at Matthews Construction. Dad couldn't stop bragging about it. He's got the vision, you know? He sees the big picture. Already talking about expanding into commercial developments. When asked about me, Dad would say, "Rebecca's doing fine. Some kind of real estate thing in Denver. Still single, unfortunately, but maybe she'll figure it out eventually. Some kind of real estate thing." I was building a portfolio worth over $500,000, but to him, it was just a hobby. The breaking point came during Christmas of my 3rd year in Denver. I was home for the holidays, excited to share some good news. I'd just closed my biggest deal yet, a small apartment building that I'd gotten for a steal because the previous owner needed quick cash. It was going to triple my annual rental income. At Christmas dinner, Dad was holding court about Daniel's latest project, a luxury home development on the outskirts of town. 20 houses, each one worth over $400,000. Daniel's overseeing the whole thing. Kid's got his grandfather's instincts. I waited for a pause in the conversation and said, "Actually, I have some good news to share too. I just bought an apartment building in Denver. 6 units, all rented, generating about $8,000 a month in income." The table went quiet. Then Dad started laughing. "An apartment building? Rebecca, honey, you can't just call any old building an apartment building. How much did this place cost you?" $450,000, I said quietly. The laughter stopped. Dad's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, suspicion, and finally, anger. "That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money." I leveraged my other properties. Put down $90,000 and financed the rest. "Other properties?" Mom spoke up for the first time. "Rebecca, what other properties?" I explained my portfolio, 7 properties across 3 neighborhoods, total value approaching $1.8 million, generating about $15,000 a month in rental income. I'd been living off my day job salary and reinvesting everything, but I was already making more from real estate than my salary at Pinnacle. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Finally, Dad spoke. "Rebecca, I don't know who's been feeding you these numbers, but someone's taking advantage of you. You can't possibly own almost $2 million in real estate. You're a nice girl, but you don't have the experience or the instincts. Someone's running a con on you." It was Daniel who delivered the killing blow. "Come on, Becca. We know you're smart, but this sounds like fantasy. Are you sure you're not getting confused about what ownership actually means?" They thought I was lying. After years of proving myself, after building something real and substantial and profitable, they genuinely believed I was either delusional or being scammed. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to keep trying to prove myself to people who were determined not to see me. Instead, I was going to show them exactly what they'd underestimated. I started researching my hometown's real estate market with the same intensity I'd brought to Denver. What I found was fascinating and deeply personal. Matthews Construction had been successful, but Dad had made some questionable financial decisions over the years. He'd expanded too quickly, taken on too much debt, and was highly leveraged. The luxury development Daniel was managing was beautiful, but it was also a massive financial risk in a market that couldn't necessarily support $2,400,000 homes. More importantly, Dad had been talking for years about his dream project, a custom home on 30 acres outside town, complete with a workshop, guest house, and horse stable. It was going to be the crown jewel of Matthews Construction, a showcase of everything the company could do. He'd been planning it for over a decade, designing and redesigning every detail. The land had been in our family for 3 generations. Dad owned it free and clear, which was good because everything else in his business was mortgaged to the hilt. The plan was to build the dream house over the next 2 years, using it as both a personal residence and a marketing tool for the business. There was just one problem. Dad needed capital to break ground, and his credit was maxed out from the luxury development project. He'd been looking for an investor, someone willing to put up the construction costs in exchange for a percentage of Matthew's construction. I started making phone calls. The first call was to my mentor at Pinnacle, Sarah Chen. Sarah had moved to a private investment firm that specialized in real estate development. I explained the situation, not the family drama, just the business opportunity. "You want to invest in a small-town construction company?" Sarah sounded skeptical. "Rebecca, that's not typically the kind of deal we handle." "I know, but hear me out. Matthew's Construction has good local reputation, experienced crew, and a potentially valuable showcase property. The owner is looking for capital to complete a high-end custom home that could serve as a marketing centerpiece. If structured correctly, it could be a solid investment. What's your connection to this company?" I took a breath. "It's my father's business." There was a long pause. "Rebecca, mixing family and business is usually a recipe for disaster." "I know. But I also know this market, and I know this company's capabilities. I'm not talking about a family loan. I'm talking about a legitimate business investment with proper documentation and clear terms." Sarah agreed to look at the numbers. What she found confirmed my analysis. Matthew's Construction was solid but cash poor, sitting on valuable assets but unable to access the capital needed for growth. The Dream House project was actually a smart business move, if it could be completed. "All right," Sarah said after a week of due diligence. "We might be interested, but we'd want significant control over the project. This wouldn't be a passive investment. We'd need guarantees, milestone payments, and the right to step in if things go off track." "What kind of guarantees?" "The property would need to serve as collateral. If your father defaults on the construction timeline or budget, we'd have the right to foreclose and complete the project ourselves." My heart started racing. What would the investment terms look like? We'd put up $800,000 for construction costs. In exchange, we'd want a 60% stake in the completed property, plus first right of refusal on any future projects. Your father would retain 40% ownership and management control as long as he meets all milestones. And if he defaults? Standard foreclosure proceedings. We'd own the property outright and could either complete construction ourselves or sell the land. It was perfect. Too perfect. I almost felt guilty about how perfectly it aligned with my intentions. The next step was approaching Dad with the investment offer. I couldn't do it directly, he'd never take me seriously as a business partner. Instead, I had Sarah's firm reach out through their normal channels, presenting it as a standard development investment opportunity. Dad was thrilled. A major investment firm wanted to partner with Matthew's Construction? It was validation of everything he'd worked for, proof that he'd built something worth serious money. The contract negotiations took 6 weeks. Dad hired a lawyer, reviewed every clause, made sure he understood the terms. He was being careful, which I respected. He wasn't naive about the risks. But he also wasn't asking the right questions. He never asked who the actual investors were behind the firm's decision. He never inquired about why a major firm would be interested in a small-town project. He just saw the opportunity to build his dream house with someone else's money, and that was enough. The day he signed the contract, Dad called the whole family to share the good news. I was in Denver, listening on speakerphone as he explained the deal. "This is it," he said, his voice full of excitement. "This is what I've been working toward my whole career. A major investment firm believes in Matthew's construction. They're putting up $800,000 for the dream house project. That's amazing, Dad, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I was proud of him for building something worth investing in. Daniel's going to oversee the construction, Dad continued. This is his chance to prove he can handle the big projects. If this goes well, we'll have more opportunities than we can handle. What happens if something goes wrong? I asked, knowing the answer but needing to hear him say it. Nothing's going to go wrong. This is what we do. We build houses. We've been doing it for 25 years. The investors did their homework, they know we can deliver. The construction began in April. I followed the progress through family phone calls and Daniel's social media posts. The foundation went in perfectly. The framing went up ahead of schedule. Dad was documenting every step, already planning to use photos of the process in future marketing materials. For 6 months, everything went exactly as planned. Then the luxury development project started having problems. The issues began small, a few buyers backing out due to financing problems, some cost overruns on materials, weather delays that pushed completion dates back several months. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to strain Matthew's construction's cash flow. Dad made the classic mistake of robbing Peter to pay Paul. He started pulling resources from the dream house project to cover costs on the luxury development. Not money, the investment contract was strict about how those funds could be used, but time, materials, and crew. The dream house construction slowed down. Missed its first milestone by 3 weeks. Sarah called me when the first milestone payment was delayed. Rebecca, your father's company is showing signs of financial stress. The luxury development is behind schedule and over budget. We're concerned about their ability to complete the dream house project on time. What are the contract terms if they miss milestones? We have the right to demand immediate completion of the missed milestone plus a penalty payment. If they can't meet that deadline, we can call the entire loan due immediately. And if they can't pay? Foreclosure proceedings begin. We take ownership of the property and can complete construction ourselves or sell the land. My stomach dropped. It was happening faster than I'd expected. How long would they have to cure the default? 30 days from written notice. I thought about Dad, probably working 18-hour days trying to juggle 2 major projects without enough resources for either. I thought about Daniel, learning hard lessons about project management under the worst possible circumstances. I thought about Mom, who would lose the house she'd been planning for 15 years. And then I thought about every time Dad had told me I'd never amount to anything. Send the default notice, I said. The call came on a Tuesday evening in November. Dad's voice was strained, older than I'd ever heard it. Rebecca, I need to talk to you about something. We're having some cash flow problems with the business. The luxury development hit some snags, and it's affecting our other projects. I'm sorry to hear that, Dad. Is there anything I can do to help? Actually, there might be. You mentioned you've been doing well with your real estate investments. I was wondering if you might be interested in a business opportunity. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. What kind of opportunity? We need about $200,000 to get through the next few months. Once the luxury development is complete, we'll have plenty of cash, but right now we're in a tight spot. I could offer you a partnership in the business, maybe 10% for a $200,000 investment. 10%. After years of telling me I'd never amount to anything in business, he was offering me 10% of a company that was about to lose its most valuable asset. Dad, that sounds like a lot of money for me. I'd need to see financial statements, understand the risks involved. Rebecca, I'm your father. You can trust me. This is a sure thing. Just a temporary cash flow issue. I'll need to think about it. Can you send me the details about what the money would be used for? There was a pause. Actually, there's something else. We might lose the dream house project. The investors are calling our loan due because we missed some deadlines. If we can't come up with $800,000 by the end of next month, they're going to foreclose. Oh no, Dad. That's terrible. Can you get an extension? We're trying, but these big investment firms don't mess around. They want their money or they want the property. Have you tried negotiating with them directly? Daniel's been handling the communication. He says they're not interested in extensions. It's pay up or lose everything. I felt a twist of guilt about Daniel. He was in way over his head, trying to negotiate with a firm that already knew exactly what it wanted. Dad, I wish I could help, but $800,000 is way more than I have available. What about your properties? Couldn't you borrow against them? There it was. Even in crisis, even needing my help, he still couldn't bring himself to ask directly. It had to be framed as me borrowing money, taking on risk, while he maintained the fiction that I was just a nice girl playing at real estate. I don't think that would be wise, Dad. I can't risk my investment portfolio on a business loan. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Rebecca, this is the dream house. You know how much this means to me. I've been planning this for 15 years. It's everything I've worked for. I understand, Dad. But business is business. You taught me that. When did I teach you that? Every time you told me I was too emotional for business. Every time you said I didn't have the killer instinct. Every time you explained that I'd never amount to anything because I was too soft. Another long pause. Rebecca, this isn't the time for hurt feelings. I need your help. And I need you to respect that I'm making a business decision based on sound financial principles. Just like you would do. The call ended without resolution. Dad was angry, confused, and probably scared. I felt terrible about it, but I also felt something else. For the first time in my life, I felt like he was seeing me as someone who could make decisions that affected his world. The foreclosure proceedings began the following week. I flew home to oversee the process personally. Sarah thought I was crazy, but she understood my need to be there. Just remember, she warned me, this is business now. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment. The legal process was swift and efficient. Matthew's construction had 30 days to cure the default by paying the full amount owed. When they couldn't, the property automatically transferred to Sarah's investment firm. On paper, at least. What Dad didn't know was that I was the majority investor in the fund that had made the loan. Sarah's firm was the face of the transaction, but 80% of the money was mine. I'd used my Denver property portfolio as collateral to secure the loan, then structured it through the investment firm to maintain anonymity. I was foreclosing on my father's dream house with my own money. The day of the foreclosure, I drove out to the property for the first time. It was beautiful, even half-finished. Dad had designed every detail with meticulous care. The bones of the house showed his craftsmanship, the same attention to detail that had made Matthew's construction successful. Standing in what would have been the living room, looking out at 30 acres of rolling hills, I understood why this had meant so much to him. It wasn't just a house, it was proof of everything he'd accomplished, a monument to 30 years of hard work and business success. I also realized that I was about to take it away from him. The legal transfer was scheduled for the next morning. Dad had requested a final meeting with the investors, one last attempt to negotiate some kind of extension or partial payment plan. He arrived at the lawyer's office wearing his best suit, the one he saved for church and special occasions. Daniel was with him, looking tired and defeated. They'd been scrambling for weeks, trying to find alternative financing, but no local bank would touch a loan that large for a project that was already in default. Sarah handled the meeting professionally but firmly. The terms of the foreclosure were clear and legal. Matthews Construction had defaulted on the loan, and the property would transfer to the investment firm the following morning. "Is there nothing we can do?" Dad asked. "Some kind of payment plan, maybe?" "The contract was very specific about the consequences of default," Sarah replied. "The property serves as collateral, and we're exercising our right to foreclose. But this isn't just any property. This is my dream house. I've been planning this for 15 years. My whole family knows about this project. Mr. Matthews, I understand this is difficult, but business is business. You signed a contract knowing these terms." Dad's face went red. "Don't lecture me about business, young lady. I've been in business longer than you've been alive." Sarah remained calm. "Then you understand that contracts have consequences." The meeting ended with Dad storming out, Daniel trailing behind him. I waited until they were gone, then asked Sarah to give me a few minutes alone in the conference room. I sat there for a long time, thinking about the choice I was about to make. I could still back out. Sarah's firm would complete the foreclosure, finish construction, and sell the property. Dad would lose his dream house, but at least he wouldn't know his daughter was responsible. Or I could go through with my plan. Reveal my involvement, show him exactly what his underestimated daughter had accomplished, and claim ownership of the project he'd called the pinnacle of his career. I thought about every dismissive comment, every time he'd praised Daniel while ignoring my achievements, every family gathering where I'd been treated like an afterthought. I thought about Christmas dinner, when he'd laughed at my success and accused me of being delusional. I thought about the look on his face when he'd said, "You'll never amount to anything, Rebecca." I made my choice. The next morning, I showed up at the lawyer's office for the final transfer of ownership. Sarah was surprised to see me. "Rebecca, you don't need to be here for this. We can handle the paperwork." "Actually, I do need to be here. There's been a change of plans." I explained what I wanted to do. Sarah tried to talk me out of it, warning me about the emotional complications of revealing my involvement. But I'd made up my mind. When Dad and Daniel arrived for what they thought would be their final humiliation, they found me sitting at the conference table with a stack of documents in front of me. "Rebecca?" Dad looked confused. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for the foreclosure proceedings, Dad. I'm the new owner of your dream house." The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about? The investment firm that made the construction loan?" "I'm the primary investor. 80% of the money was mine. I financed your dream house, and now I'm foreclosing on it." Daniel spoke first. "That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money." I pulled out a folder containing documentation of my real estate portfolio. Current market valuations, rental income statements, loan documentation, investment account balances. The numbers were undeniable. "Net worth of approximately $4.2 million, I said calmly. Annual income from rental properties and investments of about $380,000. I used my portfolio as collateral to fund the construction loan." Dad stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. "This can't be real." "It's very real. The same real estate investments you've been dismissing for years. The apartment building you thought was impossible? It's worth $1.8 million now. The fantasy portfolio Daniel accused me of lying about? It's all documented right here." "But why?" Dad's voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you do this to me?" Because you told me I'd never amount to anything. Because you spent 34 years making me feel worthless and incompetent. Because even when I proved my success, you couldn't acknowledge it. Rebecca, I never meant, you meant every word. And now I'm going to finish building your dream house. With my money, my contractors, my vision. And when it's complete, it's going to be proof of exactly what I've amounted to. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. The property transfers to me today, I continued. Construction will resume next week. I've already hired a new crew and ordered materials. The house will be completed within 6 months. And then what? Daniel asked. Then I'm going to live in it. The dream house Dad designed is going to become my dream house. Every detail he planned, every custom feature he obsessed over, it's all going to be mine. Dad finally found his voice. Rebecca, please. We can work something out. I'll acknowledge your success. I'll apologize for what I said. Just don't do this. Dad, this is business. You taught me that business and emotions don't mix. You taught me that only the strong survive. You taught me that I'd never amount to anything. I stood up and gathered my documents. Congratulations, Dad. Your lessons worked perfectly. The foreclosure was finalized that afternoon. I became the legal owner of 30 acres and a half-finished dream house. Dad drove home to tell Mom that they'd lost everything they'd been planning for 15 years. But I wasn't done yet. The next 6 months were the most satisfying period of my life. I hired the best contractors I could find, many of them former Matthews Construction employees who'd been laid off when the business started struggling. I paid them 20% above market rate and gave them creative freedom to exceed Dad's original specifications. The house became legendary in our small town. People drove by just to watch the progress. Local suppliers competed for the contracts. The attention was incredible, and it all came with a story. The daughter who'd been written off had returned to claim her father's crown jewel. I documented everything on social media. Time-lapse videos of construction progress, photos of high-end finishes being installed, virtual tours of rooms taking shape. The contrast was impossible to ignore. While Matthews Construction struggled to complete basic projects, I was building a showcase home with unlimited budget and timeline. The comments on my posts were illuminating. Old high school classmates who remembered me as the quiet bookworm couldn't believe what they were seeing. Family friends who'd watched Dad dismiss me for years were reconsidering everything they thought they knew about the Matthews family dynamics. But the real vindication came when Architectural Digest reached out about featuring the house in their magazine. A small-town custom home wasn't typically their style, but the story was irresistible. Successful real estate investor builds dream home on family land after foreclosing on father's construction company. The photo shoot was scheduled for the week after completion. Professional photographers would capture every detail of Dad's design vision, executed with my resources and determination. The magazine would reach millions of readers, all learning about what I'd amounted to. 3 weeks before the house was finished, Dad showed up at the construction site. I was there reviewing tile work in the master bathroom when I heard his truck pull up. Through the window, I watched him sit in the cab for several minutes before getting out. He walked through the house slowly, taking in every room, every detail he'd planned but couldn't execute. The quality of the work was extraordinary, better than anything Matthews Construction had ever produced. Custom millwork, imported stone, smart home technology integrated seamlessly throughout. He found me in the kitchen, running my hand along granite countertops that cost more than most people's cars. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you. Your design was solid. I just had the resources to execute it properly." Rebecca, I owe you an apology. Do you? He was quiet for a long time, looking out the window at the view he'd selected for this exact spot. I was wrong about you. Obviously wrong. I don't understand how I could have been so blind. You weren't blind, Dad. You just saw what you expected to see. I was never the failure you thought I was, but I was also never the success you could recognize. I'm proud of you, he said, and for the first time in my life, he sounded like he meant it. That means something to me, I replied. But it's also about 30 years too late. He nodded, accepting the judgment. What happens now? He asked. Now I live here. I run my business from the office you designed. I host dinner parties in the dining room you planned. I swim in the pool you dreamed about. And every day, I remember that I amounted to exactly what I decided to amount to. Dad left without another word. I watched his truck disappear down the driveway, kicking up dust on the road he'd driven countless times while planning this house. The Architectural Digest feature ran 4 months later. 12 pages of glossy photos showing every detail of the house, accompanied by an article titled From Foreclosure to Dream Home, How One Woman Built Her Father's Vision. The article didn't shy away from the family drama. It told the complete story, the dismissive father, the struggling construction company, the daughter who'd built a real estate empire while being told she'd never succeed. The writer had interviewed neighbors, former employees, and local business owners, painting a comprehensive picture of what had really happened. The response was overwhelming. Real estate websites picked up the story. Local news stations requested interviews. I started getting calls from other investment firms, interested in partnering on future projects. But the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. My phone rang on a Saturday morning. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Rebecca? This is Amy Patterson from your high school class. I remembered Amy vaguely. We'd been in AP classes together but hadn't stayed in touch. Amy, hi. How are you? I saw the Architectural Digest article. I had to call and tell you how inspiring it is. Thank you, that's very kind. No, you don't understand. My father told me I was too emotional for business too. Said I should focus on finding a husband instead of worrying about careers. I've been afraid to start my own company because I keep hearing his voice in my head. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But seeing what you accomplished, seeing how you proved him wrong so completely, it's given me the courage to try. I'm starting a consulting business next month. After we hung up, I realized something important. The revenge had been satisfying, but this was something else entirely. This was impact. Over the next few months, I heard from dozens of women who'd read the article. Daughters who'd been underestimated by fathers, wives who'd been dismissed by husbands, employees who'd been overlooked by bosses. They all saw something in my story that gave them permission to believe in their own potential. I started a blog documenting my real estate investment strategies. Then a podcast for women entrepreneurs. Then a consulting practice for people who wanted to build their own property portfolios. The business grew faster than I'd ever imagined. Within 2 years, I was managing over $50 million in real estate investments for clients across the country. The girl who'd never amount to anything had built an empire worth more than the entire GDP of our hometown. Dad and I have a cordial relationship now. We see each other at family gatherings, exchange polite conversation about business and the weather. He treats me with respect, even deference sometimes, which feels strange after so many years of dismissal. Matthew's construction survived the crisis, though it's much smaller now. Daniel learned hard lessons about project management and financial planning. He's a better businessman for it, more careful, more humble. We actually work together occasionally on projects where his construction expertise complements my investment knowledge. Mom loves visiting the dream house, though she'll never admit it. She walks through rooms she helped plan 15 years ago, marveling at details that exceeded every specification. Sometimes I catch her looking wistful, imagining the life she might have lived here if things had been different. The house is everything Dad envisioned and more. I wake up every morning in a bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking 30 acres of rolling hills. I drink coffee in a kitchen that's been featured in 3 national magazines. I host business meetings in an office that was designed by a man who thought I'd never amount to anything. But the real satisfaction isn't in the luxury or the recognition. It's in knowing that I proved something to that scared college sophomore who was told she'd never succeed. I proved that other people's limitations don't have to become your reality. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have believed in you? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one, and I love hearing how people have overcome the doubt others tried to plant in their minds. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. There are more stories like this coming, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. Remember, the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving yourself right. Until next time, keep building your dreams, no matter who says you can't.